Okay. The Yom Tif, so Hoshana Rabba. We are learning as Chusfu Shleimach Ilan Chai Bar Serach and Shalamis. We're on Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. We're going to start again from Amru Ziknei Darim, middle of the Amud. Amru Ziknei Darim. There's Canaan from the south said, Hoshana, that which it said in the Mishnah, Tomei Pas. It said if a Kayan does the Avodah while he's Tomei, the Avodah is going to be possible. Ziknei Darim say that's only in a very specific case. Hoshanu, Ela Tomei Sheretz. That's only by a Tomei Sheretz. About Tomei Mace, but a Tomei Mace, on that we would say Mitaych. If the Kayan was Tomei Tumas Mace, when he did the Avodah of a Yachid, we'd say Mitaych on that. Mitaych Shemaratza Betziba Maratza Nam Biyachid. Since the Gabi Tzibur, a Kayan who does the Avodah Betuma, we're going to say Tuma Hutra Betzibur, it's also going to be Metama Maratza Nam Biyachid. The tzitz is going to be Maratza, and B'di'eved, the avodah would work. So therefore, it can't be talking about a tumas mace. It has to, when the Mishnah says that it's possible, that it's machal the avodah, that must be talking about bedavka, a tumas sheretz. Good morning, Lizzie.
Good morning. Yeah.
Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me over the background noise?
Yeah. Where are we up to now?
From Chaf Beis Amud Beis. We're starting again from the sugya of the Ziknei Darim. But let's move to the other thing because it's very loud here. We're just going to move for a second. Our second move of the day. My voice is like, hey, you could sit. You could sit over here on the side. It's over. It's a lot better. Very noisy day. It's going to be going on for a while, the Hoshana, you know. So we're just starting again, Ziknei Darim on Chaf Beis Amud Beis. So the Mishnah had said, so the basic assertion of the Ziknei Darim is that it said in the Mishnah that a Tomei, Kayin Tomei who does the Avodah is possible. So he says, the Ziknei Darim say, this is referring bedavka to a Tomei Tumas Sheretz, but not a Tomei Tumas Mace, because on Tumas Mace we would say a din of Mitaych, since Tuma is Hutra B'tzibur, and that, as we're going to see, the Gemara is going to talk about it more, but that applies by a Tumas Mace. The source for Tuma Hutra B'tzibur comes from Pesach, and by Pesach the Torah specifically refers to a mace, and as we're going to see, that the Gemara assumes that applies to both where the Roiv Yisrael is Tameh, as well as Kehanim, Rav Kehanim are Tameh. So since there's and that talks about, that mentions Bedavka a mace, so that's, since there's a Hutra over the Emitech Hutra B'tzibur, it's going to also be Hutra B'yachid. That means we're going to extend that which the tzitz is Maratza, and says that a carbon that was brought betuma is b'diavad good, that will be even on a carbon yachid, when it's brought for tumas mace, it's going to be marat. So therefore, our Mishnah must be talking about tumas sheretz, where there's no mitaych, there's no hutra b'tzibur on sheretz, which is going to be controversial. The Gemara is going to discuss that. In fact, the Gemara, so Amru Ziknei Darim, Loishanu Tomei Sheretz. Only talking. Our mission is only talking about Sheretz, Torah Shemetz. Our Tomei Mace is Tomei Tumas Mace. Mitoich Shemaratza Betziba Maratza Nam Biyachid. We'd make a mitoich, since there's a Tomei Hutra Betziba Legabe Tumas Mace. It's also going to be applied Biyachid. So therefore, it wouldn't be B'di'evid. You wouldn't say Pasul. Sak Gemara, Ihachi. So this Ihachi Rashi takes out, and if you see, Taisvis even notes that. Taisvis Ihachi Tomei Sheretz Nam, but could just Loigara Ihachi. I feel less of Mitoich Shemaratza. So it's a question. It's not a ihachi. Tommy sheretz nami. The fact the Gemara. Tommy sheretz nami leisi b'kalvachayim mitami meis. Why are you saying that Tommy sheretz is going to be different than Tommy meis? That it's not hutra b'tzibur. Why don't you say kalvachayim that Tommy sheretz should also be hutra b'tzibur? Ma Tommy meis sheton hazor shlishi yushvi meratza. If we say that Thomas Mace, it's going to be, we're going to make a mitoich. We're going to say that it's I'm sorry, not the mitoich. Like we said, that it's going to be hutra b'tzibur by Pesach. But Thomas Mace is more chomer than Thomas Sheretz. That you need, he's tamei for 7 days, and he needs hazoyis of the mechatos, which are not as Thomas Sheretz. As soon as he becomes tamei, he could be tribal, and that night he's start. Thomas Sheretz, the any ton hazot gimel shi, any din shemeratza. So the mar kasavri ziknei dorm mechapren kemiskapren. He says no, it's gzeira shava that we say that those that are mechaper, meaning the kaihanim, are kemiskaprim, are like the bailim. Ma miskaprim tame meis in tame sheretz loy, and miskaprim, the din that they can, that it all, like we said, it all comes from Pesach. That the Torah says legabe the korban Pesach, that if roiv of Klal Yisrael is tamei, then they roiv of Klal Yisrael is tamei, then they bring it on Pesach Sheni. But if an individual yid is tamei, if roiv Klal Yisrael is tamei, then that's deicha the tumah. If there's an individual Yiddish Tameh, he's supposed to bring it B'Sheni. But if he brings it on Pesach, it's going to be kosher. It's not going to be Daicha. But that only applies to Thomas Mace. So we're going to say the same thing will apply. Well, we're going to see the Miskaprim. The Miskaprim is not so simple because the Miskaprim don't really have to do anything to get they don't have to go into the Beis HaMikdash. They don't even have to eat the Korban Pesach in order to be Miskaper. So that's going to be the next discussion of the Gemara, is what exactly is the status of the Miskaprim. But B'derech Klal, the rule is, this din that we said, that Tumah is Hutra B'tzibur, and that it's also going to be Hutra for individuals, that's on Tumas Mace. So we say, Mechaprim, Tamei Meis in, Tamei Sheretz late. We're going to say a hekesh that don't tell me a kal v'chaymer that it should apply to Tamei Sheretz as well. It's a hekesh that just like there's a chiluk between the Tamei Meis, just like the mechaprim, the miskaprim are going to be, there's going to be a chiluk between Tamei Meis and Tamei Sheretz, that we're not going to say Tamei Sheretz is Hutra. So we're going to say the same thing. Legabe the Kayin, if the Kayin does it, Batuma, which is our discussion, Tamei Meis in, Tamei Sheretz loy. So now the Gemara asks this question. So, like we said, we have to understand exactly what do we mean the miskaprim. What do we mean when we say the miskaprim is Tamei Meis in, Tamei Sheretz loy? My kasavri, ikasavri ain't shaykh the mizarkan al Tamei Sheretz. If we're saying you can't, it's not just that a Tamei Sheretz, a Kayin. We have to first talk about the miskaprim. So when we say the miskaprim, there's no heter for a Tamei Sheretz. If we hold that you're not allowed to shecht, or you can't do the avoida of a carbon when the bailim are Tamei Sheretz, then why isn't the taka hutra for a Tamei Sheretz? It should. We're saying that since there's a chiluk between sheretz and mace, legabe the miskaprim, we're going to say a hekesh to make the same chiluk legabe tumas mace. Legabe the tumah of the kuna when the kain is tumah. But the Gemara is saying, if the din is that you can't bring the carbon of a tumah sheretz while he's a tumah sheretz, that means on Erev Pesach, he's a Tamei Tumah Sheretz, and he's going to bring, this guy's in pretty good shape, because he's not bringing the carbon, and by the night, he's going to go dunk in the mikveh, and that evening he's going to be ready to eat the Korban Pesach. So what? If you say, but nevertheless, since he's tummy to Mesheretz, his tumah says he's not allowed to have a carbon brought on his behalf, then he should be nichlal in the heter of a yachid who's tummy tumas mace. That we said that a yachid who's tummy tumas mace, the tzitz is miratz on him, since the tzitz is miratz, that if even though he shouldn't, he's supposed to bring it on Pesach Sheni, but the tzitz is miratz and allows it, since it's nidche, that he can't bring it on Erev Pesach. So therefore, if he does bring it, it's going to be miratz. So we should say the same thing for the Talmid Tumas Sheretz, that if he's not allowed to bring it on Erev Pesach, he should also get a ritzui from the tzitz, and it should be kosher b'diavad. That was your question, whether it's b'diavad. So we're saying, if it's true that he can't bring it on Erev Pesach, like we're saying, then why taka does he not have the same din as the mace? Whatever is nidcha on a yachid, the tzibur could do it betuma, and therefore you should be able to say mitaych. Ella kasavri shechtav v'zartan al tamish sheretz. It must be that you could bring the carbon as a tamish sheretz, and therefore you don't have this kavachayim. Amar takaluhu reish lakish ledrumai. They said, but what you're saying is we still have a kavachayim. So where are you coming out? Which is stronger, the kayach of the kayin, the mechaprim, or the kayach of the miskaprim, those that are miskaprim? Haviyayim kayach miskaprim. It comes out that the bailim are in better shape as far as being able to bring a carbon b'tumah. We just said, so the only way we could understand the B'nai, the Durumoi, what are they called again? Ziknei Darim, is by saying that they hold you can't be mishalach, that you can be mishalach the Betumah Sheretz, you could send the carbon pesach to be brought. Mishalachim is saying you can't do it when the bailam are Tomei Tumah Sheretz. Kayin shenit b'sheretz ain't miratza, but a kayin that was nitma b'sheretz is not allowed to do the avodah. Malkam shenitmu bailam b'meis, and a malkam shenitmu bailam b'meis she'ain mishalachim is saying that the bailam are not allowed to be mishaleach their carbons. Kayin shenit b'meis ain't a din she'ain miratza. Certainly a kayin whose nit b'meis should not be miratza. So we still have the same kal v'chaymer. Kayin shenit b'meis. So to say that you're trying to say that a kayin shenit b'meis is miratza because of mitoich, but we should have a kal v'chaymer to say he should be miratza because if the miskaprim are not miratza, certainly the mechaprim shouldn't be miratza. So the Gemara kasavri niziknei darim tomei meis nami mishalei carbon noisa. He says, no, your whole this kavachem is also not correct, because the tomei mace also can send it's not just the tomei tumas saras that can send his carbon to be brought, also tomei tumas mace. Correct the Gemara of Aksiv ish kiyeh tomei va'asa pesach b'chodesh hasheni. You're saying a tomei mace can bring his carbon. He could say even if he's not able to eat it, even if he's in the first day of tumah, it doesn't make a difference. You're saying that he could bring the carbon because he doesn't have to. He could get his kapara, he could get his ritzui from the carbon pesach from having it brought in spite of his tumah. His tumah is not relevant. Correct tomorrow, but it says eshesh kiyeh tumah v'asa pesach b'chodesh hasheni. Someone whose tumah is supposed to be matche his pesach and bring it on Pesach Sheni, and you're saying that he's allowed to send it to be brought. So when do you ever have a Pesach Sheni? So tomorrow la mitzvah. That no, Einachanami, he's supposed to wait for Pesach Sheni, but all we're saying is b'diavad, if he had his carbon Pesach sent while he's Tomei Tumas Mace, it's going to be Marat. Back to Gemara Vaksiv. A few pages I gotta catch up. Vaksiv Ishlafi Achloi. It says only someone who's able to eat, that you have to send out, you have to make the carbon Lafi Achloi according to those that are eating it. It's like Rashi, Lafi Achloi Haroi Lachila Techoisolav the Hainu Shchita. It means you could only include in the carbon those, you can only shecht it for those, having in mind those who are going to eat it. And since he's tamei, he can't eat it. So tomorrow la mitzvah. Again, that din that that it has to be that was saying. First of all, that he has to wait for Pesach Sheni, and second of all, that if you shecht it, having in mind someone who's not able to eat it, that's also a mitzvah. But it's not mak. In fact, are you telling me it's not likuva that which you're required when you shech the carbon to have in mind only people who are able to eat it? But Tanya, the michzas nefashos, you have to count the amount of people. You can only shech the Pesach for those who were part of the original cheshbon. You have to make a reservation. You have to count yourself in on the carbon from the beginning. And when you shecht it, those are the people that have to be had in mind. Shachtu shalol minuyav, someone who shechted it, and maybe that's only lechatchila, but maybe like it's a mitzvah to do so. How do you know that it's likuva? The Torah is going to find throughout Kodshim everything that is b'derech klal. When the Torah just says one time azhara, we say it's only a mitzvah. It's only when it's repeated or there's a special limit that tells you it's ma'akav. But over here we do have la'akav. It says b'michsas nefashis, and it says tachaisu. Hakatav shana love la'akav. That legabi this din that you have to have the people who were originally counted as part of the group, they have to be had in mind. And iskash oichlin leminuyin. And this din is not that you have to do it leminuyav, is hookish to this din that when you shecht it, you have to have in mind only people who are able to eat it. These are two separate things that we're talking about here. So, but there's a hackish between them. So first, the Torah says that in order to be part of the carbon pesach, not just in order to part, when you bring the carbon pesach, you have to have in mind the original people who were counted as part of the group. And secondly, that the people, when you shech the carbon, you have to only have in mind people who are able to eat it. And we said this din of leminuyav, that has to be for the people who originally counted, is la'akiv. So how can you tell me this din that has to be for people who are capable of eating it is only l'mitzvah? Because we were saying that because we have the problem. How could it be that a tamei mace can have in mind the tamei mace, can bring it on behalf of tamei mace, but l'chayr it should be la'akiv. So tomorrow ziknei daram le'makshi. They don't hold of the hekish. They're not makish. It's true that leminuyav is ma'akiv, but the din that it has to be shaychtin for people who are able to eat it, that they don't hold of. So in Hanami, they hold that both someone who brings a carbon when he's a carbon pesach, when he himself is a tomatum tzaras, not tzaras, sheretz, or tomei tumas mace, he is going to be able to send his carbon b'di'evet, and it's going to work.
But he's not going to eat, but he's going to be yotzei anyways.
Right. That's certainly true. Now, like we said, the kohen has to have in mind people who are able to eat, but it's like any other carbon. You think about it, it wouldn't make sense. How could you go retroactively be mevatel a carbon? What happens? You have 100 people who are all part of this thing, and one guy doesn't show up to join the eating. So now you're going to say everyone else is not yotzei the chiyuv, the mitzvah carbon pesach. Once you get past the carbon was brought, then you get the kapara, you get the ritzu. Even though you have to have all this in mind when the kohen's shechting it has to be 4 people who can eat it. He has to have in mind all the people who are part of the carbon. But if they end up not showing up, it's still a ritzu. I have a question I still can ask a question. Meaning, even though we're going to say that we're saying it's only the mitzvah that you have to, that someone who's tamei can't bring it, but I could still have a question. I could still ask my Kal V'Chaimer. This is how we slugged up the Kal V'Chaimer that we'd asked before, but we say we could still ask the guys. We ask the question for the fact that it's l'chatchila you're not supposed to bring it for someone who is tamei. When the bailim are tamei b'sheretz, they could send their carbon l'chatchila. Kayin shenit b'sheretz, a kayin who's tamei b'sheretz, ain't a meratza. If he brings a carbon, it's not meratza at all. It's mechol. Malkum shenit mubailim b'meis, according to Ziknei Darm, right? They hold that tamei sheretz is where we say it's mechal. Malkum shenit mubailim b'meis, she'ein meshachim resein l'chatchila. But it's tamei sheretz they could do l'chatchila. Tamei meis was saying they can't be. It's only b'di'evet that they could bring it. Kain shenit b'meis ain't a din she'ein meratza. L'chayr it should be that a tamei tumas meis should not. It should also not be meratza. So this is shver on the Ziknei Darm. The Ziknei Darm were trying to say that it's only tumas sheretz that we say mitoich, but we don't say it by tumas meis. So why don't we say tumas meis? Because they're Kal V'Chaimer. And the Gemara does not give an answer for this Kal V'Chaimer. And not only does it not give an answer to this Kal V'Chaimer, it now goes back to the original Kal V'Chaimer and tries to prove that the way we had answered the original Kal V'Chaimer, that saying tumas sheretz is the tzitz is that the tzitz is going to be. I'm sorry, that you could bring tumas sheretz to chatila. That's a question on that. Meisvei. Meisha amru nazir ba'oisich pesach hatzitz meratza al tumas dam. What was I have to remember the context of this, Brisa. The Mishnah said a Pesach that its dam was nizrak, and afterwards he found out that the carbon is tamei, the tzitz is meratza. But if the person is tamei tumas aguf, the tzitz is not meratza. And the Mishnah explains over there, Neisha Amru nazir va'oisa Pesach. Someone who's a nazir who became tamei, so he has to bring karbonis after he finishes his tumah, after he's no longer tamei. And oisa Pesach, hatzitz meratza al tumas dam. The tzitz is meratza if the carbon becomes tamei, the dam of the carbon becomes tamei. Ben is meratza al tumas haguf, but it's not meratza on where the person is tamei. B'mai. So what is that talking about? Ilay tumas sheretz. If it's talking about tumas sheretz, amat sheretz, then v'zarkan al tumas sheretz. We said lechatchil you could bring when the person himself is tamei tumas sheretz. And one of the things we talked about was a Pesach. Elo tumas meis. It's talking about tumas meis. Uktani einat tzitz meratza. And we're saying even so, if he does it b'di'evet, the tzitz is not meratza. Alma nitmu b'aylam meis ein b'shalchim resein. So you see that you cannot, unlike what the Ziknei Darim had tried to answer, that they were forced to say in response to the original Kal V'Chaimer that tamei tumas meis mishalchim carbon resein of if the tamei tumas meis meaning of the bailam it's mishalchim resein. Nevertheless, they can send their carbon, but we're saying over here l'chayr it has to be that we're saying that's not the case. If the bailam would to be tamei tumas meis ein a chanami, it would be mishalchan. It's not correct. But my skin kanish shenit mu kayin b'sheretz. We're talking about where the kayin. We're not talking about the bailam became tamei. We're talking about where the kayin became tamei tumas sheretz. Neisha amru nazav oizes hatzitz meratz al tumas dam and tzitz meratz al tumas go. So we're talking about the kayin. We're not talking about a tumas bailam. We're talking about the tumas kayin, and on that we're saying like with this, which is exactly what the shita of the Ziknei Darim is. But that's problematic with the seifa of that Mishnah. Yachi ema seifa. Nitma tumas hatahaim. The Mishnah, the Bryce is mechalik between a regular tumah, tumas mace, and tumas sheretz, and tumas hatahaim. Tumas hatahaim is a suffix tumah. It's a inherently suffix tumah, something that there was no way to know about it at the time the person became tumah. So we say about that, nidma tumas hatahaim hatzitz meratza. Says on that the tzitz meratza. So when we just said we're talking about the tumah of the kayin. We said that tumas time only applies to meis bilvad. Lameis lemute mai, lav lemute tumas atahaim. The sheretz is it now coming to exclude that there's no tumas atahaim on sheretz? But we said in that brisa, we said nidma tumas atahaim hatzitz meratza. But we're trying to say that this was going on the kayin, which applies to. We're saying that the tumas sheretz. We wanted to say nidma tumas atahaim hatzitz meratza. We had wanted to say that the first part of what we said in the Mishnah is Nesha Amru Nazav Vayse Pesach Tzitz Meratza Al Tumas Dam Ein Tzitz Meratza Al Tumas Aguf is talking about a tumah of the kayin. But now we're saying that applies to. It's not meratza al tumas sheretz, but we're saying that the din that tumas atahaim does not apply to tumas sheretz. So how could we switch that? We said that the first part of the Mishnah was talking about tumas sheretz, but now we're talking about tumas atahaim, which excludes sheretz. No, sheretz is also included. The first part of the Mishnah is talking about sheretz, and we're talking about the kayin. But what we're trying to say is that, but tumas tahaim can include sheretz. What all was included when we said that it's only talking about tumas mace, it means, but not a zav. A zav where the ziva comes from the guf is a different type of tumah. But tumas sheretz would be included together with tumas mace. That would be applicable the din of tumas atayim.
So there's no tumas time for ziva.
Yeah, that means there's no heter of tumas tahim that we say that it's not going to be tamei. That we'll say it's the tzitzis meratza.
This a person cannot possibly not realize.
So they find out. He can find it's something he couldn't have known at the time, but he finds out later. So it's impossible.
That's toy.
Time, yeah.
It's possible by ziva to be a toy.
So they say the case of ziva would be if he was ben hashmashus. A zav is somebody who saw 2 days in a row. He saw Rias 2 days in a row, and one of the days was ben hashmashus. So there's no way to know which day. If it was part of the first day or the second day, that would be the case of tumas tahim by himself. So Gemara, Bella had the boy Ram Bachama, Kayin Hamaratz. So we're back to saying that the Ziknei Darim say that a Kayin right. So we're back to saying that we're back to the original. What we came out was necessary to say according to Ziknei Darim that if the Bailim are Tomei Tumas Mace, they have to be able to be Yotze B'Diavad if they sent their carbon Pesach to be Keshachtim. In fact, tomorrow I'll have the boy Rabba Chama. Chayin Hamaratza B'Karm they say. I'm sorry, did I skip? Am I in the right place? Yeah. I'll the boy Rabba Chama. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm talking about. We're still talking about Tumas time. I'll the boy Rabba Chama. Chayin Hamaratza B'Karm they say. A kohen that is coming to be meratza with his carbon, does this din that tumas tahim has a kula that it's meratza the carbon? Does that also apply to the tumah of the kohen, or is only the tumas of the bail? What we're according to the way the we just had to explain that Mishnah of Nesha Amu Nazav Oisa Pesach, we should be able to say that Tumas Toim is Hutra for the Kahanim also. The whole teretz was that we said that it's not talking about the Balaam, it's talking about the Kayin. And we're saying the Seif of the Brises is talking about Tumas Toim, is also talking about the Kayin. So Gemara, the Rami Bar Chama Vade Pliga, Eina Chanami. According to Rami Bar Chama, we're not going to have an answer for this Brisa. He's going to have to have been learning, not like the Ziknei Darim, he's going to hold that a Kayin, that it's talking about not the Kayin, it's talking about the Bailam, and Eina Chanami, Bailam cannot bring their carbon betuma, their carbon Pesach betuma. So Gemara asks on this conclusion of Rami Bar Chama that he's chaylik on the Ziknei Darim. I should say he's chaylik on the Ziknei Darim. It's not clear if the Ziknei Darim are Tanoim or Amoraim. So Rami Bar Chama, if they're Tanoim, he wouldn't be able to be chaylik. But I guess the Ziknei, he would have to say that he agrees with the kashas that we have on the Ziknei Darim. He said there must be a Tana that disagrees. Or from these brises that we brought, that brise he would hold disagrees with the Ziknei Darim. So, but in any case, Toshma, it says Aaron is going to get hartza with the tzitz on the Avoyna Kachem. What is he going to be able to overcome? Im Avoyn Pigel. So for some, this is like I remember when I learned this back in Brisk like 30 years ago. It drove me bananas. I cannot understand this. But over here, Avoyn Pigel, Rashi says very clearly, it's not talking about Pigel, which is Chutz Lizmani. It's talking about Chutz L'Mkoimei. The pasuk calls Chutz L'Mkoimei Pigelhu. So this Gemara, for some reason, decides to call Chutz L'Mkoimei Pigel. Harikanem lo yechoshev. The pasuk says, Im ha'yachal yachal b'sar zevach shalom b'yayim ha'shlishi lo yiras ha'makavos lo yechoshev lo Pigel yeh v'never shayachal min avoy netis. Im avoy noiser, and if it's talking about avoy noiser, now it is talking about Pigel. It's not talking about. It doesn't make sense to say it's talking about eating nicer, because when you eat nicer, you can't passel a carbon either. Harek farnama lo yerotzet. The Torah says on that legabe something that is taka pigel, that it also it passels the carbon. So both chutzlim kaimai and chutzlim zman, avs machshavas of either of those things, both of those passel. So what does the Torah say? What does it mean when the Torah says that the tzitz is meratza? It must be talking about a tumah that is hutra b'tzibur, meaning not the machshavas pigul or machshavas with some kaima, but rather a general something that's a tumah. My tumah, which tumah is it talking about? Ilem mitumah sheretz. If you're talking about tumah sheretz, heiche ishtri. Where do we find that a sheretz is ishtri? What does that mean? Because
we said it's not Hutabah.
Right. So we said we don't have before we get. We're saying with Hutra with the tzitz. Where did we find that that there's a Hutra by Thomas Sheretz? Ella Thomas Mace. Ella Maya talking about Thomas Mace. V'lav going shenit mubaylim b'mace. And it's not talking about with the Bailam Atomei B'meis, because that was the pashtus of the Gemara. The Gemara understood when we said that the tzitz is meratza. It's not talking about the kehanim becoming tamei, but it's talking about the Bailam. Alma nitmu Bailam B'meis Mishal Kom say it. So this is a raya to the Ziknei Darim, and not like Rami Bar Chama, that you see that the Bailam who became Tomei Mace, was saying that tzitz is going to be meratza because we find Thomas is hutra b'tzibur. So Gemara, Ubamai, what are we talking about? Even Nazir, what case are we talking about? If we're talking about a Nazir Chiyamas Meisel of Amar Achmana, it can't be talking about. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead a step. We're just saying that this the tzitz is meratza by a tumah. Now, what are we talking about? It could be one of two things. It'll either be talking about a Nazir or a Pesach. It can't be meratza on Bailam who are bringing any other carbon, because any other carbon, it's irrelevant if the Bailam are Tomei. The Bailam are not. The Bailam send the carbon and they have no There's nothing stopping the carbon from being bought because the Torah doesn't say anywhere that they can't be tummy. So it has to be either Nazir or Pesach. Now the Nazir, if he's still tummy, if he's tummy tumas mace, he's got to restart his whole 7 days of waiting in order to be ice Nazir that he could bring this carbon. So this carbon is anyway not applicable because it says Chiyamas Mesa Lav Amar Achmana. It's only after when he's a mace, then he has to go through this process and then he brings the carbon. El Loisa Pesach. So it's Elamite's talking about a Pesach, and you see, like I just jumped the gun before, you see that by a Pesach, if you're the Bailam Atome Tumas Mace, it's Hutra and you could bring it. So Gemara, no. La'olam b'sheretz. V'shem tuma ba'olam. Gemara says no. It's talking about where he's tummy tumas sheretz. By a tumas sheretz, there's no het Hutra by a sheretz. No, we just mean since Tuma is Hutra, Legabe Tumas Mace, the sheretz, the tumas sheretz will be Hutra. The thing that we're saying that since we find that it's Hutra, doesn't have to be the same thing that we're being matir. Some have the exact opposite, that they darshan the pasuk the other way around, and therefore it's instead of being a kashan ram b'chama and a raya to the ziknei darim, it's the other way around. It's a raya to ram b'chama. Avoin hakachim in avoin magdishin loy. We learn from the pasuk with the same pasuk v'hoya al metzach aron that the tzitz is meratza. It says that meratza al avoin hakachim. It's meratza on the avoin hakachim, but it's not on the magdishin. It's not meratza for the bailim. My tuma, which tuma we talk about? Ilay metuma sheretz mi ishteri b'tzibur. We have the same problem. How could we apply this to tuma sheretz? It's not hutra b'tzibur. Lav tumas meis. We're saying that it's not meratza on the bailim. So fakert, it's a raya to rami b'chama. Bailim tuma sheretz, same bailim to same tuma bailim. We have the same teretz that it doesn't have to be the same thing that it's being matir and the same thing that's being hutra. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll start fresh on Motzi Yom Tov. Thank you so much for bearing with us.
And everyone.
Have a good Yom Tov.